Good morning and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. This morning, the Chief Justice, head of the judiciary, president of the Supreme Court, is in the Supreme Court seeking justice. She's suspended. 5 suits so far seeking to stall and to stop the impeachment process. Why are they failing in such succession? We'll be probing the twists and turns including to the arrest of a man who filed a petition for the dissolution of the committee. He had suspicions. He said they were facts. There's a video footage that reveals something else. Article 71. The office holders, their pay and their pegs. John Mahama promised to do away with it. Can he? Will he? Professor Kwaku Asare has stoked a lot of controversy and got many people angry seeing the pegs or salaries that have been approved by the holders of Article 71 offices. Your judges, your heads of independent constitutional bodies, taking in excess of 65,000, 67,000, and so on, with a pension he says is ridiculous and the pairs cannot sustain. Why the outrage? We'll take you into the details of what has been approved just in February of 2025 for these office holders. Are they really as obscene as the professor wants us to see them? And of course, the killer floods are back. When will it stop perpetually recurring and killing citizens all the time? We are spending huge sums of money and getting nearly zero results since 19, like they say, Kojohoho. We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. Welcome back. And here is Samson's take. Oliver and Louisa. They are calling for a few good men. They are calling for good men. Not too long ago, the special prosecutor was pleading for a few good men. This week, Godfrey Dame, the former Attorney General, has been begging for good men in this country. Oliver and Louisa literally wrote Samson's take. Oliver says, these are the ramblings of a broken heart. And he has an item. Item 1. Let's steal from Ghana Airways, be put on boards, and ring-fence shady contracts for our friends. Then watch it inevitably collapse and immediately turn around and blame we Ghanaians. That's how we are. Yeah. Let's be put on Ghana Water Company's board, arrange shady contracts, and when the company fails, inevitably, let's blame all Ghanaians. Let's jump on ECG, arrange shady procurements, disappear cables, and split the loot to buy ourselves immunity. When ECG collapses as it has now, let's turn around and say, Why can't we solve common doom so? Let's appoint ourselves to VRA. Let's defund it to fund the lifestyles of party cronies. And when it disintegrates slowly, let's throw our hands in the air and wonder what at all is wrong with this country, because theft has no obvious correlation with ruin. Our political class lead by greed. They protect thefts and they treat our demands for a dignified life as ramblings of the mad. Yes, I am mad. Because this country cannot continue, half corrupt, half jaded, where one half steals, the other half stops believing. No nation can stand with one foot in plunder and the other in vain promise. Yet, that is what we have become. We are a nation split, one side corrupted by greed and the other side numbed by disappointment. That is not a future. We should leave our kids. We cannot have one half of Ghana looting the future while the other half is told to pray harder. We cannot keep pretending that systemic collapse is a mystery when we watched it happen. Contract by contract, kickback by kickback, board meeting after board meeting. It's not Ghanaians who did this. It is the political elites and their friends in suits. It's the consultants who wrote the lies, the lawyers who blessed the thefts, and the accountants who buried the paper trail. And until we name them, until we stop romanticizing their titles and providing them with immunity because they are of our party, until we make thefts not just illegal, but unforgivable, Ghana will remain a country in ruins, ruled by ruiners. Let's stop blaming the people. Let's start unmasking the criminals. The real patriots are not in parliament. They are in protests. Arrest the rots. Recover the loot. We deserve a life of dignity. But who will lead us? The ones fighting for board appointments? No, they certainly will not. And Louisa Lai summarizes this in the best way you could ever find. That the political class continue to steal and cripple the system because they are emboldened and enabled by the quibble foot soldiers who defend the corruption. Many also choose to turn a blind eye because the thievery is perpetrated by their party people. The few who protest and speak up are attacked. Seems like a hopeless situation. And that will be my take, written for me beautifully by Louisa Lai and Oliver Baka-Vomawo. Louisa Lai is a chartered accountant, banker, project management practitioner, and industrial relations coach. She's a concerned Ghanaian. She's one of the few good women that we need in this country to save it from where it is heading, inching closer to the eclipse. I'm Samson, Lardy, Anyenini. We'll be right back. Good morning once again and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. It is brought to you by the kind sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN, everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 plus years. My Way Insurance, Dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Flamingo Paints, simply superior. Syntax tanks, it's strong and it's durable. Activa International Insurance, our clients are passion. an International Facilities Management Association, is proudly associated with your most authoritative news analysis platform, Newsfile. So, get to meet our guest for this morning. Alfred Chiayeboah is former Deputy Attorney General and Minister of Justice. Joins us via Zoom. Professor Kojoa P.J. Etua is Associate Professor at the School of Law, University of Ghana. Professor Sharif Mahmoud Khalid is economic advisor to the Vice President, and Amanda Okoko Clinton is Head of Chambers, Clinton Consultancy. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for making time to join us this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Great, great. So let's begin this way, rather, instead of the way we have advertised the program. Let's quickly look at the issue of the Accra Floods. Very briefly, before we go into the matters concerning what is happening as far as the impeachment proceedings are concerned, and also Article 71, and huge amounts, quote to quote, that have been revealed that has got many people angry at what is going on with that particular compensation for those class of workers in this country. So the floods have come again just after very small rains, and 5 deaths have been recorded. We have in excess of 3,000 people who have been affected. Odona, Sahara, Oli, we are talking about many places that have been affected. Odona, Sahara, Weja, Kaneshi, Adabraka, Adenta, Dodowa, Oyarifa, and parts of Tema. And as we understand, in 2024, flood mitigation funding cost the state 8.2 million Ghana cedis. And this was disbursed to 17 AS in Accra. Also, we had the 2024 Garrett projects, and it brought us a loan of 150 million United States dollars approved for flood resilience in Greater Accra alone. We're told that the estimated cost to solve Ghana's flood crisis requires $5 billion US. I met a white man doing a World Bank project, and he asked me, sanitation in this country is synonymous to corruption, correct? I didn't know what answer to give him. Let me go to... Okay, first, let's start with you, Amanda. What do you say about these floods? They come every year and they kill us. We just watch on. We look for them we wait to die.
Mm-hmm. I think we don't necessarily have a flooding problem in Ghana. We have a planning and enforcement problem, essentially, and we need the boldness to prevent it.
Planning and enforcement problem, not flooding.
We don't have a flooding problem, you know. And in relation to what you said about the foreigner who was commenting about our sanitation, I saw this interesting take on TikTok where it literally said that I think Ghana had sanitation before parts of even the UK, etc. So how on earth did we get here? But I mean, that's besides the point. But ultimately, I mean, if we can't manage our drainage problem, we won't be able to handle our future. And like you said, if so much money is required, it really is about planning, enforcement, and the boldness to prevent that, because if we can't do this, how are we going to build the future that we want, essentially? And there is a lot of funding. Like you also mentioned, I think you mentioned the 2024 Garrett project loan for drainage improvement, solid waste management, and urban resilience. And that was a $150 million loan. And yet, year after year, it's always the same sort of areas that are affected and the same sort of issues. And yet there's more flooding in different parts of the world, but you don't see lives being lost. So as our wonderful government takes on the mandate of corruption and everything else, I really think showing leadership is also about planning and enforcement in this regard.
But what do you think? What does it tell you of our leadership that your citizens are dying with the onset of the rain without fail, and you can't solve that small problem?
It's not a disaster problem. It's a design problem or a failure to design a system, basically. And so if we have to lend from other countries in terms of how they manage to overcome this within Africa, etc., then we should. But it is a national embarrassment, I think, that lives are being lost, that just a bit of rain, you know, and sometimes the rain is a bit more, but it's sanitation, it's waste, it's drainage, and once we tackle this, maybe we can even conquer the world.
Interesting. Amanda, thank you very much. But, Prof, it does appear she has really diagnosed the problem in a way that many of us have not thought about before.
Okay.
That it is not a flooding problem.
Not at all.
It is not. It is a planning and enforcement of the very beautiful regulations and laws that we have. I was in court just this week. Guess one of the businesses I was doing in the courtroom. Remember the flood and fire disaster?
Yeah.
Where hundreds were burnt and died in the floods, and they were just picked up and dumped into the bucket of trucks. Those who suffered, those who lost their limbs, those who were burnt, those who thankfully didn't die, we represented them in the court, and they were speaking under cross-examination and crying, weeping. We're still here.
Well, I mean, I do agree with Amanda to an extent in terms of planning and enforcement, but I'll go more on the enforcement side of things than the planning. The planning happens. We have Ramsar sites. We have, you know, buffer zones. Don't build. So we have planned.
Ramsar sites that we have willed to our children.
For in perpetuity, forest reserves, among other issues. So now, if we have all of this existing, buffer zones that are not supposed to be built on, parks, among other issues. Today, we are even struggling to have parks for our kids to play, right? That's a big problem. It's a national shame, and this is where it's really a big embarrassment. So if you look at it from this context, we have planned, but the enforcement of it. Where I live, right, Samson, it's disappointing. It's heartbreaking to the extent that, look, everyone is building along the road and confining to, someone comes to block the road and builds. Behind his house, the road continues. It was planned. We all are doing it.
When you said where I live,
yes,
I thought you were going to take us back to the UK where you
were
teaching.
in Ghana.
Okay.
No, I mean, UK, we have floods among other issues,
all
right? Where even in most developed countries, I was going to come to that, we still have floods despite their planning. They get it, they're planning right, but floods still do come. How about us that are still also getting our planning right, but enforcement is a problem which is resulting in this flood? I have a cousin who lives at Lakeside. He's seeking refuge in my house now, he and his family, because, look, he's been living there for the past 10 years. He's not had a flood before. So it means something fundamentally had gone wrong to ignite what had happened. What is it? It means we're building in places we're not supposed to, right? We may say, as a systemic problem, that, look, there's no funding to drain some of the, maybe the Odona and all of that, which has, but we've been receiving sanitation budgets among other issues. I don't want to go to the politics of it, of how a sanitation minister could have probably gone a step ahead to see how we could do all of this.
And that reminds me, if my producers can get us the plan, the design that we were shown of what was going to become of the Odo, you know, under Cecilia Dapa, and they put it up and they got the president excited. You know, let's get it out and let's ask a few questions.
Yeah, the plan ended up accumulating money in a room, isn't it?
Yeah. We are not sure about that.
Okay, so, well, somehow.
Yeah.
So you look at all of this and then you ask yourself, where is the enforcement of this? Right? They come and put land guards or whatsoever because they are macho men to force people to have these buildings. I mean, that building in my neighborhood, it's It annoys me each time I drive home and I see that, look, right behind the road continues. So what it means is that he has built in the middle of the road.
And nobody's doing anything.
Nobody's doing anything. It's a commercial property. He's renting out.
There's a local authority there.
Nobody's doing anything about it. So that's where the enforcement issue comes in. So until we're able to do this, so imagine the water running down, right, comes to meet this massive edifice with no drainage for passage. What's going to happen? Our houses are going to flood.
Which I understand is part of the reason for the flooding at the lakeside, because there's a certain portion of, at a certain point where there's some bridge of sorts, but people get there to build. Authorities go there, get them to demolish them. The next day, they go back.
So you have the town and country planning doing their work. You have all of the agencies probably doing their work in the planning side of things. Then it comes to enforcement. And this is where personal responsibility as citizens ought to also come in. Right? Okay. Why would someone come and do that? And we watch helplessly.
Yeah, but people are looking at government's ability to protect people. So the buck stops with
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It stops with, which is why committees have been put in place to say, okay, well, can you come out with a recommendation on what is happening as far as these floods are concerned? You have a Deputy Chief of Staff of Operation who is involved in this. You have the Minister for Works and Housing, very key to that. You have other security agencies like the NADMO, among other issues, to actually, but can we begin to action this? If they come out with a report to say, okay, well, X agency is failing us, so what can we do to get them to do the right thing? You saw the president when he visited the Wager area at the Ramsack site, what was happening, right? You have, again, our land tenure system, I think, does not really also help, because government is coming in to say this enforcement. Stool landowners are also saying a different thing altogether, right? So who has power over such land and what should be done with it?
Government has power to ensure the planning.
Yes.
Regardless of the fact that the land belongs to you.
Yes.
Government has the power to determine the planning.
Which we agree, and which government has been doing. But then you have landowners who also think otherwise. So how do you, within this culture of local institutional authority and government, how do we marry the two in actually trying to solve a problem? So we really have a hydra-headed problem ahead of us, which affects all of us, which is why I'm thinking or saying that it's just not only the sole preserve of government to fix this. We individually have personal responsibilities, and the state institutions as well, and civil servants who have the object responsibility to ensure and enforce this. That's where I look at it more from the enforcement angle. Right, which
public-private partnerships perhaps would help.
Well, I mean, the point is, these private partnerships, you have all of these splash estates coming up, which the average Ghanaian can afford.
Okay.
All of that. So,
let me, do I have Alfred Cheyewo on the line? Yes. Good morning, Senior.
Good morning, Council.
Yes. So, well, you love Siani because the place... sometimes a bit quieter, but these days we understand, even on the streets, there it's not the same as we used to think about. But this is Accra. 5 people dead after just a little drizzle, really.
Yeah, Samson. It's rather unfortunate that over 50, 60 years after independence, every year we have this challenge in Accra and other cities in Ghana. You mentioned Sunyani. Sunyani is a well-planned city, but I can assure you, nowadays when it rains, sometimes when you're driving around the streets you're not careful, you may land yourself in a ditch. All because of, not because Sunyani alone, because of indiscipline. So if you ask me, I would say, every time a flooding has to do with indiscipline. Indiscipline on the part of the law enforcers, indiscipline on the part of those of us who build. When it comes to the laws of the land, I can tell you, Samson, we have a lot of statutory provisions dealing with how we should build, where we should build, etc., etc. But the key challenge is about enforcement of these regulations and other statute laws or statutes. Now you look at a situation where you have the various assemblies which have been given the power to enact bylaws to regulate activities within the various municipalities and assemblies. Most of the assemblies in Accra, I can tell you, have various bylaws dealing with where and how we should build. But the question is, are we implementing or enforcing those bylaws? It's also a fact that if you go to the planning division of each of the assemblies, they plan. They plan the cities, they plan the towns, but those of us who also build, do we go by the rules and regulations that we are supposed to comply with when we are building? That's why I spoke about indiscipline on our part also. And people are now emboldened to even build on waterways. You confront them and they try to blackmail you by telling you that if you are in government, we are going to show you the exit when it comes to elections. People block the streets. They throw trash into our drains. They do all manner of things. When they are confronted, then they tend to blackmail the government in power. People live at places that they are not supposed to live, in slums. Those areas are supposed to be green belts. They are supposed to be the collection point of water, etc., but they are living there. You try to evict them, then there's a blackmail that the government will show you the exit. I mean, these are some of the things that we should confront head on. And I decided to read around this issue about flooding and I realized that in the 60s, we have flooding in Ghana. In the 70s, flooding. 80s, flooding. 90s, 2020s. I mean, it's been recurring each year.
Right.
And every year, we have discussions like we're having today.
Yeah.
But after the discussions, we go to sleep.
You know, Kokubako used to be a regular on this show. We got to a point where he just got tired. Anytime he came up, he said, look, I'm tired. The things I said last year, if you can play them back.
He's right.
It's sad.
He's right. Because you spend all your time trying to diagnose the problem. After diagnosis, it's expected that there should be treatment. The treatment element is always missing.
Right. Okay, so we keep talking.
As I was ending, in terms of the planning processes, as Amanda rightly mentioned, that we need even private partnership among other issues. You know, historically, right, I don't speak, but Jolo, right, if you ask the meaning, the literal meaning of Jolo, it means a gigantic hole, right? How come? Look at the kind of development we're having. In any developed country, would you have the creme de la creme living few meters from an interchange in the way some designs are around within this Jolo area? I'm not mentioning names, but we see how all of these designs come about.
Okay.
Can we keep going like this?
Well, the people get in, they start, and then the authorities also just...
You know, people go and fill holes to build.
They just give up. Let's go to Professor Piaget Tia. Prof, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Hello, Prof. Do we have Professor Piaget? Kindly unmute your mic, Prof.
Yes. Thank
you. Great. Good to have you. Good to have you. Are you speaking to us from home?
No.
Oh. You're supposed to be home because today is Nanekia's special day, right?
That's right. That was yesterday, actually.
Oh, that was yesterday?
Yes.
Okay. So they take care of us all the time. Tell us, what did you do? What did you do?
Putting the professor on the spot.
I decided to travel out with her so that we can have some quiet time together.
I get it now.
Yes.
Okay.
So all to show appreciation for her love and care, and to wish her that the new year will see more caring and more loving and more dedication on her side to me and to the rest of the family. So my appreciation to her for
Happy birthday to Nanekia Apiejetia. Okay, this blunt speaking professor, how you take care of him, we have no idea. Prof, tell us about the floods. And I don't know if you feel the way I feel. And I was just mentioning that, you know, there's a trial going on, the flood and fire, and many people lost their lives. Their dependents are suffering. How many years on? You know, there's nothing, no support for them really. The state just came and paid their medical bills at the start, and that was it. Some of them are completely disfigured, permanently disfigured, and here we are, back to the same situation. Flood, people are dying, 5 people gone.
Yes, it's a very sad spectacle, Samson, and it shows how leadership takes the ordinary person or the ordinary citizen for granted. And the fact that the issue continues to repeat itself. And we also know the places where people mostly who live in those places get affected. It tells you clearly that it affects the poor and those in other communities where infrastructure is not well preserved, or they are not put in place in a way as to ensure that people will be able to benefit from good infrastructure in those communities. And so at the end of the day, the people who die.
Just a second, I had called for a certain video, and that's what is being played. This is what we were told the Odo will turn into. As you walk by the Odo, if you drive past it or you are closer to it, you can tell that we are nothing close to this. It's smelly, and it's getting choked all the time, and it's part of a major part of the flooding in the city, isn't it? Yes, Prof, continue.
Yes, and so at the end of the day, what you realize is that there are some communities which get affected, and in those communities, clearly, these are communities that are not in flash areas of the country or the city that the rich and the famous live. And so at the end of the day, the solution is, the picture we get is that these people are taken for granted. And so the solution has been suggested, and I take Amanda's view on this, that it's about planning, it's about lack of planning and lack of enforcement, because the sanitation issue is a big problem in such communities. People don't know or don't have means to dispose of their garbage. So they keep this garbage until it rains, and then they deposit them in the gutters and other drainage systems in their communities. The drainage systems get choked, and the result is what we have. But I also want to say that it's not just about the planning and lack of enforcement, but it's also about people's attitudes. And so, until we get a mind change, we may continue to have this problem even if we get things in place. So it is important that we all look at ourselves and say that this is what I can do to ensure that this thing gets better. There's a role for all of us, but at the end of the day, it's the government.
Yes.
Those who are making money out of this, it's like a venture. Every year, they make big money out of it because they present budgets, they get the money, and they don't do anything.
All right.
And so we see this recycling of the problem going on. As Mr. Tuaewa said, I saw a photograph that was flying on the social media platforms. In the 1960s, there were flooding. And if up to now, today, we are unable to solve that problem, then we have a big problem on our hands. And so we should stop. In your Samson's take, you're talking about the issue of how we have allowed the government is taking us for granted, more or less. And people are not able to voice out their issues, and the problem continues to fester around. Poverty production, we are producing poverty, and this is the leadership producing this poverty, and people are suffering out of that. So every year, the people who die are not the rich and famous. These are people in poor communities. And so I don't know where to start from. It's like the elephant, whether to touch, which part of the body to touch, because it comes down also to the municipal assemblies. Bribery and corruption at the assemblies is a big problem. And people put up buildings without permits and so on. And when every year the government says we are going to demolish these structures, they don't end up demolishing them, or they demolish them discriminately. Last year, I recall, or last 2 years, Mr. Henry Corte said we'll demolish the buildings on the Ramsar site. And then later on, he turned around and said, no, we can't we can't put down some buildings for some ridiculous reasons. And so these buildings were kept. This year, President Mahama said, we're going to demolish these buildings. They are still there. So what are we waiting for? The Greater Accra minister said they are going to demolish some buildings after some municipal assembly heads have been appointed. Why do we wait for municipal assemblies or MCs to be appointed before we demolish buildings when we already have the floods here? But the solution is not just about demolishing the buildings.
Right.
It's about respecting even international laws. These Ramsar sites, we have signed international agreements. We have ratified them. We are supposed to protect these sites, but we are destroying them. So that is a problem we have. And so until we are able to ensure that we consider these people as persons that are also worthy of living as decent human beings.
Right. Thank you very much, Prof.
The sites that they built, which is also a problem.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. As we know, there is an anti-flood task force, the thing we are very good at, right? An anti-flood task force has been set up. The membership is 6 people. Stan Dogbe, Deputy Chief of Staff, Kenneth J, Minister, Water Resources, Ahmed Ibrahim, Minister, Local Governments, DCOP Razak, National Security Coordinator, Teddy Adi is Deputy Director General of NADMO, and Maretta Brew, who is the legal counsel to the President. They are supposed to do some work and ensure that this doesn't recur. I don't know if I can have faith that they can do anything for this not to recur. Even though they can, I don't know if they will. In 2022, we had the Ghana Hydrological Authority established, and I remember how we were made to believe that it will bring us the solution. And I'm just showing you on your screens the inauguration of that committee authority and the promises that were made, that we're going to present a master plan that will ensure that this does not recur. We'll take a quick break. We'll return to look at the Chief Justice in the Supreme Court, where she presides, but now suspended, seeking justice for herself. You're welcome back to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Sulemana Isifu says that, unfortunately, in Ghana, we build our cities before planning them, instead of planning them before building. First, we need to protect our wetlands. Second, there must be stringent enforcement of our planning and sanitation laws. Third, instead of paying huge sums of money to a sanitation company without any benefits, those monies should go to the assemblies and be given clear KPIs on the sanitation planning and flooding. That's Haj Sulemana Isifu. And he says, regards to Prof, my schoolmates and school prefects. Ghana is just a mess. Educated people sit down for land guards and other people to dictate how we live. I have a house sitting in the middle of the road, like Sharif is saying. When there is an emergency, only God knows what will happen and who will be the victims. Abubakar Ibrahim shared that one. Ernest Asigri says that the flooding at some portions of Nana Krom Lakeside Estate, I am told, is the result of a new diversion from two major drains from the Adanta Dodowa Road construction, which is now channeling much of the water from the Eburi Mountains without large outlets to carry such large volumes across the motorway area. This is therefore a hydrological defect from the Dodowa road construction. If this is not addressed, it will become a new flooding area created by the government. Flooding area created by the government. Politicians should make up their minds that they have only 4 years and enforce the laws. Until then, we will always come back and speak about what law enforcement will simply do. Gamel from Wutu Obrachere. Thanks for that, Gamel. Abdullahi Pegla Issa says that we are failing to prevent floods because of our inability to fight filth and stopping people from building on waterways. The lack of political will in fighting indiscipline is the bane of our floods predicament. Richard Esson says Ghana has a flooding problem with well-documented causes and solutions. One of the biggest causes is poor town planning. Is flooding a problem in Ghana? That's the question he asks. To Amanda, yes, severe. It is often severe and causing it. Loss of lives and property disruption, blah, blah. Thank you very much for your messages. We need systematic reforms. Thank you for all of that. Now, let's get to one of the issues that continues to divide the country, I could say. In the last couple of months, at least 2 months, since it came public, the NPP, once the NPP is on one side and the NDC is on the other side, you can tell. It's like what they say when the elephant and who suffer, do what suffers. Now, there's a recent development as far as the matters in respect of the Chief Justice are concerned. And the Chief Justice has issued a writ, this time herself. And her lawyer is Godfrey Dame. And she's asking, among others, for a public, a broadcast of the committee process. Let's hear a few people about the matters that have transpired in the course of the week and come to the studio.
Process has been riddled with a lot of inconsistency. The process has been laden with grave violations of the Constitution each step of the way. In the first place, even the President's consultation with the Chief Justice, when he had not notified the Chief Justice of receipt of the petitions, was even unconstitutional. It is part of the release we are seeking. Secondly, the manner in which the so-called prima facie determination was made was also unconstitutional. It's an affront to the Constitution. Every citizen of this country is entitled to a fair trial. This process clearly it violates every tenet of a fair trial. How can it be told the Chief Justice that yes, a prima facie case has been made against you, and that is it? There's no reason given. There's no specification of which of the allegations, the reasoning for it, the basis, and what have you. And these are basic rights that every citizen of the country ought to enjoy. Justice Paman is one person that I respect a lot. But how can it be that Justice Paman will give 4 judgments in favor of one of the petitioners in the matter and be appointed as the chairman of this committee? And it is not only one matter. Apparently, it is actually two of the petitioners. He also sat on all of the cases involving the police officer, who is also a petitioner in this matter. So clearly, the whole process is really all kinds of inconsistency and leading with people who are afflicted by conflict of interest.
Supreme Court. Well, they have spoken. I will go into conclave with my lawyers and we would advise ourselves. Right. Appropriate.
It is an MPP NDC legal battle. And I said that as far as that picture gets painted, the ordinary Ghanaian citizen would think that it has seemed to be a legal battle, that has now become a political controversy, behind the scene, and allow some other, lawyers to represent the Chief Justice. I'll not, have any problem with it. So the problem I have with it is that it is entrenching, the political divide. So it's now clear the lines are drawn. It is NPP, it is NDC. And it was something that started as a legal battle, is now engrossed in a political controversy.
Government is showing intolerance. They have to watch it, because if government allows extremists and hardliners to control the government, it doesn't help the cause of democracy. We're in this country, and we all know how the NDC executives, leaders in parliament, party folks, their posture. We all know the kind of posture, and attitude in opposition. I'm not sure that if what we're seeing today had happened to any of them, NDC would have been quiet. Be that as it may, they have government. Someone has petitioned the president. If you are not happy with it, do you get the NIB to storm his residence and unarm the citizen of Ghana? Well, we've seen him. The NIB officials claim they are doing investigation, and they are not done. So we've just left him. Fortunately, his lawyer is there. Let us see how the government dances around this.
Right. So you have been listening to Godfred Yeboah-Dame, James Kobna-Bomfeh, whose application was lost by a 4-1 majority decision of the Supreme Court. But as you know by now, soon after that was dismissed, then we had a writ issued and injunction application being sought on the 21st of this month. It was filed at 3 a.m. It is by Her Ladyship Justice Gertrude Araba Esaba Tokonu, and the defendants are the Attorney General, Justice Gabriel Scott Puamang, who is chairman of the committee, Justice Samuel Kwame Adibu Esiedu, who is a member of the committee, Daniel Yao Domelovo, who is a member of the committee, Major Flora Bazawuna Dalogu, who is a member, and Professor James Sefa Jisa, who is also a member. Of course, you heard Ansa Asari, who is a former director of the Ghana School of Law, who thinks that the Chief Justice's move is rather bad. And then you had Afenyo Marking, who was at the Bureau of National Intelligence. We all love to call it the BNI. Now it's NIB, and it makes it difficult to say.
Name.
Yeah.
The handful one, the
to help to get bail for the young man by name Adenta Kumi, who was arrested over the publication and commentaries that he made, including a petition, we are told, to the presidency, alleging that the chairman of the committee and then a member of the committee, Justice Siedu, as well as Justice Yoni Kolendi, and a lawyer to one of the petitioners, met at a restaurant, and they were overheard discussing the petition, and therefore he wanted the whole committee to be dissolved. let's begin with Professor Appiah-Etua. The twists and turns. I don't know where you want to take it from. There are just too many issues around it.
Yes, Samson, it's true. There's been a lot of twists and turns, and it is true also that we see a situation where the whole judicial process regarding the petition that is supposed to be determined to determine whether the Chief Justice should remain in office or not has been politicized, and so it creates a very bad scene, especially for law students who want to know the law and know the processes involved in many or several legal situations that may come up. And so it's very unfortunate that this has been the turn of events. Be that as it may, I think that we have to look at what the Constitution is saying and to be able to abide by the tenets of the Constitution. I see a situation where the law is clear on the face of it, and so you need to go by the black letter interpretation of it in some ways, but also there's an attempt to go by the purposive interpretation approach and to seek to sort of redesign the Constitution more or less to be able to ensure that justice is served. And so at the end of the day, where we are now, it looks like we have to let the process work. And so my view on it is that unless we get to the bottom of this, we'll not be able to know how this whole process will end up. There seems to be some misinterpretation that this is an attempt to remove the Chief Justice, but I don't think we should see it that way. There is a process in place, and at the end of the day, the result could be the Chief Justice is removed or she's not. And I think the issue about the suspension has also led to a situation where some have concluded that if there's a suspension, there's definitely the Chief Justice is going to be removed. So that interpretation, I think, is wrong, and it's unfortunate that some seasoned lawyers are making that interpretation, and which has caught on with some political followers, and therefore it has led to the clear politicization of the matter. So that issue, the case as it is now, should be allowed to work. I think that the decision, the most recent step in the whole process where a writ has been issued, to my mind, is unfortunate. And it looks like we want to really drag the matter in a way that will muddy the waters. It's unfortunate. I see clearly that there's some kind of some discord or mistrust within among the Supreme Court justices themselves, looking at the way the suspended Chief Justice is trying to suggest that the members on the committee can be biased, and therefore they cannot sit on the committee. So all these things imply that the whole process has been politicized. And I can also conclude that the justices themselves, in a way, have been politicized. And so there seems to be people taking sides based on, with some political color involved in it. On the part of the Attorney General, I also see some contradictions or contrary behaviors. The former Attorney General, because the posture he took when he was the Attorney General and where he is right now, it seems to me contradictory, and it's actually confusing to me. When he was the Attorney General, we know some of the decisions he made, some of the unethical issues that were involved or connected with some of the cases he did. He seems to be on a different path now, seeking for redesigning, reinterpretation of the Constitution to make sure that justice is served for the Chief Justice. And so at the end of the day, I don't really know where he stands and what he wants to achieve by this. Of course, on one side, we see that he wants to ensure that the Chief Justice is restored to her position, and then the whole process is abrogated. But my question is, to what purpose? Is it, in what way is this case and the way he's approaching it going to help in the jurisprudence of the Supreme Court, and how we as learners of the law and especially students of the law can learn from it? That will help them to learn about constitutional law, administrative law issues, even human rights related issues. And so at the end of the day, we need to be cautious how we let politics enter into the legal arena, so that we can learn something out of it in a way that will improve the study of the law. Of course, it's at the end of the day, justice needs to be served. And I think that the processes, as has been outlined in the Constitution, that do not completely take justice out of the hands of the Chief Justice. And so I think that the processes should be allowed to serve its course. And at the end of the day, we'll be able to know what happens out of it. We have already mentioned that the process as it is not fair, but that is what we have now as the Constitution, and we need to respect that.
So first, you say a couple of things that I'm left wondering. Are you saying that the Chief Justice does not have a right, when she feels that her rights are being violated, to approach the Supreme Court and ventilate her rights? So why is it unfortunate that she has gone to court? Is that not what civilized people do?
Definitely. I'm not disputing or contesting the fact that the Chief Justice has a right to demand that her rights are respected. That is certainly the case. And so one cannot necessarily question what she's trying to do. She has a right to do that. But what I'm saying is that we should make the system work in the way that when something wrong has been done, we will make sure that while we seek to ensure that we get justice served, we also have to look at the processes carefully. And when we want to question it, we should have a firm basis for doing that.
Your point was that she's seeking to frustrate the process, but she's seeking to ventilate her rights. That's what she's saying.
I think that it's about frustrating the process. And that is why where my concern is.
Is that a fair comment to her, that she feels her rights are being violated and she's seeking to ventilate her rights, assert them, and you say that it's just an attempt to frustrate the process?
The Chief Justice has a right. I already indicated that. And she has a right to question the process every step of the way. But at the same time, some of the steps that are being taken are meant to frustrate the process. For example, if you look at the question of injunction, the injunction has been thrown in here and there. First, to injunct the Council of State, the President, the Council of States, when the issue of prima facie issue came up, even when the President had said that, okay, Chief Justice, submit your petition, your response to the petition, the matter still remained at the Supreme Court. And now they are questioning placing under injunction the way of the committee and questioning the qualification of some of her colleagues to sit on the matter. And that's why I'm saying that there is some issue about the fraternity and the camaraderie that are supposed to reign among members of the Supreme Court. And so if that is really something that is missing, then there's an issue there with the Supreme Court. But the bottom line is that if you look at the way all these processes are being thrown in, now a writ hasn't been issued, and so on, I think that's an attempt to frustrate the process. The call for public hearing, when I think it's clear that the Constitution says the committee shall sit in camera, then what is the justification for asking for the process to be changed so that there will be a public hearing? These are the issues that I think are being thrown in to frustrate the process, maybe to delay the process, and I don't know what the final outcome that may arrive.
In respect of the issue of the public hearing, we have heard people like Professor Michael Quay say, yes, the law says it has to be in camera. Everybody else can see the law plain, says it has to be in camera. But there is the need, because of the nature, the public interest nature of this case, to have a public, screening of it. This Chief Justice has been known to regularly allow matters of national interest to be televised. So what she's doing complies with, accords with what we know her to be, correct?
I think when we're talking about the decision she took in some cases to allow for public hearing, that one is discretionary. It's within her powers as head of the judiciary, administrative head of the judiciary, to be able to come to that conclusion. But in this particular case, the Constitution is clear that it shall be held in camera. So in what way that her discretionary powers that were used previously can influence that decision, I have my concerns about that. So
she says you are doing this to protect me. I waive that right. Let it be in public. I want the public to hear what I do and what all of you do to me.
Well, I mean, she can have that say, but at the end of the day, it is not only protecting her. It's not about protecting her, but it's also protecting the institutions and the processes that the Constitution has clearly spelled out here. And so I think that at the end of the day, she might be talking about protecting her integrity or the process, but this is where we are. This is how the system has been set up. And so I think that the system should be allowed to run. Where it's a gray area, then we can talk about the situation can change this way or that way. But as it stands now, in my view, it is clear-cut. So to move forward and push for a change, I think is to frustrate the process.
In the 81-page ruling by the court in the Vincent Ekowa-Sefwa, injunction application that was brought up and, dismissed, the court appears to roundly reject, the position that she should have been giving a notice of the petition. The court quotes Justice Ramsay, is it the Attorney General? Okay, the Attorney General saying that when Professor Kwekwasari brought his petition in December 2024, the same process was done. It went to, the President took it to the Council of State, I think about 2 or 3 days before she was alerted to also bring her response. And so it is not the case that once the petition came, she should have been notified of it even before it goes to the Council of State, and that cannot be a reason to want to invalidate the process. The question of prima facie, they appear to, through this particular decision, reject these claims. Is that what you see? How you see it?
Yes, Sam, I think I agree with the justices that the majority opinion here, because I think in a number of ways, the problem is with the Constitution itself, the content of Article 146, with regard to the whole process of removal of the Chief Justice from office. And so while there have been some gaps here and there, the Supreme Court itself has come in the Ajay Boafu case to clarify some of these points to allow for the prima facie issue to come in. And so the question as to at what point that the Chief Justice should have been informed and at what point should have been given the opportunity to present her side of the story for the President to have made a prima facie determination before the matter would go to the Council of State is something that the court was clear that at the end of the day, the bottom line is that she was given the opportunity. And that does not end the process anyway. There are a number of filters that need to go through. The President receiving a petition, going to the Council of State, the committee being set up. These are all processes which, strictly speaking, do not follow the judicial process as we know it. It's a sort of quasi-judicial arrangement. And that is what the Constitution has put in place. And so going by that process, I think the Chief Justice was treated fairly in being given the opportunity to present his side of the story. And then based on that, the prima facie decision was made. Now we have the committee set up. So why don't we allow the committee to work? But these attempts to frustrate the process, which I think is what is creating the problem that we are in now. Okay.
Please hold on for us. Let me come to the studio to Amanda. You've read the decision of the court?
Yes.
As rendered, the majority and the dissenting, Isifu Umoru, Tanko Amadu. If you have practiced in his court before, particularly when he was in the High Court, he was in the Commercial Court. I don't know how they do the arrangements. His court was always packed. It looks as if they identify those judges who are very efficient, and then they pile them with cases because other courts are often empty. It's like in recent times, if you entered Justice Kweku Akati's court, always packed, and they appear to dispense very fast. But other courts are empty. I don't know how they do it. So reading particularly what he wrote, what Yoni Kolendi also writes, do you agree with them as against the dissent by Henrietta Mensah Bonsu and Ernest Jayo?
Well, I mean, I think they are the seat of authority, and that is why they're sitting in the Supreme Court. So I think I'd make that distinction first and foremost. But the last time I was on this show with you, just a few weeks ago, I said the former Chief Justice would decide this matter. And in a strange way, she has, because she was the only one who abstained from the Council of State decision. And then she made further recommendations as to the constitutional review that needs to be done. And the reason I bring that up to tie into what you've just said is that the suit you just mentioned and practically 4 other suits have been rejected. And the reason they've been rejected is that the process is lawful. That's the irony. The process is lawful, but it doesn't make it just, ultimately. You know, do we want it to be this easy to remove a CJ? Is the standard high enough? And ultimately, this whole thing got started because who determines stated misbehavior, incompetence, and inability to perform? The person who determines is the executive, in a way, in terms of the petition reaches them and it moves forward. And so that is why we have, as I mentioned when I came on the show last time, the benefit of a former Chief Justice in terms of Akufo, and she's got it just right, in my opinion, because she was very diplomatic in this, in not vocally coming out as much. I mean, I think a lot of the media hasn't picked up on it, but her subtlety perhaps shows why she's a Chief Justice. First of all, she allegedly abstained from the vote as to whether this Chief Justice should be removed. And then within 7 to 10 days, she presents herself before the Constitutional Committee and she says that she really thinks there must be a revision of Article 146 on this basis.
It has to be said for her, though, that she's been working with the IEA since she retired, and together with Professor Michael Quay, the IEA has this committee that's been working for constitution review. And so they have done work for a long time. And this was the product of the work they were presenting to the Constitution Review Commission.
Which makes this even more authentic in terms of her views. Perhaps this is the only person who is non-political in all this, because had she been working on this beforehand, this makes her judgment of this absolutely non-political. And for instance, she says she advocates for the establishment of an independent body to investigate prima facie cases against the Chief Justice, replacing the current 5-member committee appointed by the president. And she cites the Kenyan judicial system as a model, where a judiciary commission comprises of independent experts which handle such investigations without presidential involvement. And as I think he's a professor who just last spoke, he also made a very good point that this whole process has been politicized. And it really is about, everybody's got their political view. Dami's come out and, he's writing it and, making his view and everything. But the truth is she might not survive this process under this constitution. And that is why all 5 cases have failed, because legally it's correct, but do we want to remove a Chief Justice so easily? And until reform comes, every Chief Justice that serves at the mercy of the executive...
You sincerely think...
could be in trouble.
You sincerely think that if the format of determining a prima facie and also setting up the committee to investigate is changed, it will be devoid of the politics, the partisanship we are
it would help.
Untreated.
It would help, and that's why she cites the Kenyan...
We will point out which lawyer is in that committee, who is MPP or NDC.
At least they'll be
those who determine the prima facie, the committee that will be set up, whether it's a permanent committee of lawyers or judges, we will look into them and say, this judge is NDC, this judge is MPP. Do you think we will ever have a solution of a reform that will be devoid of the political accusations?
The solution of the reform comes with making it a lot more difficult to get rid of the Chief Justice. Just like with the president, for instance, if impeachment processes ever started against him, it would be impossible, with this current government structure to remove him because of the number of votes. So it shows that, there is a lot of steps that have to take place. So what is being called for, and you're right, justice is not blind, and particularly when we have NPP and NDC. Justice is not blind in this country.
Lady Justice is blind, though. She's blindfolded.
She's not blind.
Yeah.
But, I think what the former Chief Justice is also saying is about this right to appeal. So like you've said, even though, journalists and everybody will comment on how many NPP people, how many NDC people, had the current or the suspended Chief Justice had this right to appeal, this would be yet another hurdle. It's not so easy to just remove her. But ultimately, I think that judicial independence is the soul of the constitutional democracy. And if we lose it quietly, we may never get it back loudly.
Okay.
And I think that is what people are fighting for. Although some would argue, that the former, the suspended Chief Justice should just resign gracefully or exit the stage gracefully. I think she is right to do what she's doing, because justice means that we all have to remember she is an arm of government, or was at one point. And just as it isn't, we saw last year, it wasn't easy to challenge the Speaker of Parliament as such. There was huge pushback. There was suggestion about removing, or not removing the president, but possible impeachment actions just last week, vetoed immediately in terms of they couldn't even start the process because it wouldn't go anywhere. That is the argument for the Chief Justice. It must be a lot more difficult. Otherwise, every Chief Justice that comes...
There are those who have argued
happen.
that this current system
Yeah.
is actually very difficult to penetrate. And those who accuse Justice Sophia Akuffo, for example, say there was a petition or petitions against her. It's the president who decide whether they forward the petition or not. So you would discover that that is why when we're making the OSP Act in 2019, we included that once the president receives the petition, within 7 days, he has to forward it. Prima facie must be determined within this number of days. After that is determined, a committee must be set up within this number of days. The committee has 90 days or so to do their decision and bring. The current constitutional arrangement doesn't have that. So presidents have received petitions and simply trash them. So some people say this particular process, if the president, you are in the good books of the president, you may never get, removed.
And that is why the call for constitutional reform centers around the idea who determines stated misbehavior, incompetence, and inability to perform.
Okay.
And ultimately, there is a call for an independent body to investigate the prima facie case. But I do not believe that this Chief Justice will get the benefit of that. I think that perhaps should a reform come, it will be a lot more difficult. But I mean, the writing is on the wall for this Chief Justice and possibly, the Electoral Commissioner, possibly, just because of the climate of politics at the moment. But this case proves we don't need misconduct to remove the CJ. We only need procedure, basically. And that is really important. And in terms of what the professor was just talking about as well, in terms of in camera, is stated in the Constitution, so that's that.
But,
I agree with you.
So you're saying what she's asking she can't get? She says
no,
she wants
I
it to
just
be
think
public.
the political... No, but my view sides with you, with what you said. This is public interest like no other. And that, it breeds speculation, having this sort of secrecy element. And also, you can't claim to protect judicial integrity behind closed doors. That's the subtlety of it. The Constitution can say one thing, but public interest always trumps all other cards. And there is no bigger public interest case at the moment than this Chief Justice.
So the question is, can she ask for what she's asking? Will she get it?
Well, the Supreme Court could determine, as they have in many cases beforehand, that public interest is at the heart of this. So they could give her one of her reliefs, which is...
This is the relief we're talking about.
Yeah.
The Article 146, Clause 8 says, all proceedings under this article shall be held in camera.
Yes.
That means in private.
Yeah.
And the justice or chairman against whom the petition is made is entitled to be heard in his defense by himself or by a lawyer or other expert of his choice. The question is, can the Supreme Court pronounce that this can be otherwise, not in camera?
In my view, yes. I mean, in my view, the Supreme Court has on, I just don't have the cases in front of me, but on countless occasions mentioned public interest as to why they're taking certain acts. And so this is public interest. And if we remove the head of the judiciary in private, we tell citizens that they're unworthy to watch this whole thing.
What's your idea of the purpose of the in-camera hearing?
Well, I think that if justice is truly being done, let it be seen to be done. And, I've noticed since the new government...
What's your idea? What do you think is the purpose for this?
Well, the purpose is transparency.
No, in-camera hearing, when they put it there, that it must be in-camera, why do you think they did it so?
Well, I mean, initially it might have been because to protect the sanctity of the position such that if you were going to remove such a position, it would be dealt with in a sanitized way, and then you present maybe findings in a sanitized way, but it's not the glaring of everything that is out there. I think that was the initial intent of why it was drafted in that way.
My last question about that. Do you think this is a right to the Chief Justice for which she can waive, as she purports to say?
It is absolutely a right, and it's not just a right to her, but it's a right to the Ghanaian people. Because ultimately, justice isn't about fairness, it's about visibility. And, you know, with the NDC coming into power of late, I mean, I think it's been 3-4 months, which has been, you know, they've had a few Supreme Court cases. Very few have been, you know, publicized. And I don't know if because some of their advocates are a bit nervous about being on camera or whatever, but at this level, as the suspended Chief Justice identified, when she said, if it's public interest, the camera should be in there. You know, we always used to hear Dami's views and, you know, different people's views. And if your argument is that good, let us hear it. Because apart from, you know, the justices sitting there, the public would hear it and the public would know, yes, it does seem to some extent justice is being done. So I do think the NDC's legal team have got to be a bit bolder in terms of not being so fearful of people seeing their advocacy
NDC
work.
legal team?
Well, meaning that when the Attorney General goes, the Deputy Attorney General, etc.
Where?
To the Supreme Court.
No, that's not what we are talking about.
Yeah.
She's saying that the committee hearing for her impeachment should be public.
It should absolutely be
not
public.
the hearing of the case in the Supreme Court. Do you get that?
Yes. But the thing is, public interest
so
invites
NDC
whispers.
lawyers are not involved here.
Okay.
NDC legal team is not involved here. Now, the question is, you say public interest, and that the Supreme Court has many occasions. When you bring a provision for the Supreme Court to interpret, you ask for interpretation because it is what? It is unclear, correct?
Of course.
Okay. So the question many are asking is, what is unclear about this provision for which you can ask the Supreme Court to interpret? Because often when you appear before them, that's the first question. If you can't show why it is not clear, they will throw you out. So what is unclear about it? It says all proceedings under this article shall be held in camera.
Yes, but again, is it just in this case? Because this is very, very high profile. It is to do with the dispensing of someone who sat as a Chief Justice, an arm of government, and one of the highest positions.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean? And I think she's also the third female Chief Justice of Ghana.
Right.
And a lot of questions are being asked as to, did stated misbehavior and incompetence really take place? And if so, you know, let the whole process be in a public forum, ultimately.
In the decision, Yoni Kolendi begins by quoting the oath that the judges take. Part of the oath that they have taken is that they will bear true faith and allegiance to the Republic of Ghana, as by law established, that I will uphold the sovereignty and integrity of the Republic of Ghana, and that I will truly and faithfully perform the functions of my office without fear or favor, affection or goodwill, and that I will at all times uphold, preserve, and protect and defend the Constitution and the laws of the Republic of Ghana. Would you say that the Supreme Court will be defending the Constitution and the laws of Ghana if they interpreted in camera to mean public hearing?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They'll be defending the Constitution?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, from the way the cases have gone so far, does it give you any indication that further processes can stop what is going on?
No. That's why I say the writing's on the wall, in my opinion, for the Chief Justice. Because, again, the process is lawful, and that is why the Supreme Court can confidently keep on saying, no, we reject this, we reject this, we reject this.
Okay.
However, ultimately, it doesn't make it just. Do we want it to be so easy to remove a Chief Justice? And do we also want to entertain the idea of an independent body to investigate prima facie cases, therefore a change of the Constitution to make it not only harder, but to have a right of appeal, for Chief Justice to have the right of appeal as well.
Yes, Prof, let's hear you.
Quite interesting. I mean, I've been listening to all of what is happening. But you see...
you have heard from two lawyers.
Two lawyers.
You'll be hearing from another lawyer.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm coming here with common sense. So, for example, I mean, looking at all of this, the theatrics surrounding and the charade that have been played out in this particular case points to one thing. And having heard from the moderates start to say, oh, it's been politicized. That's all it was being boiled down to, right? And that's the kind of success these needless interventions are beginning to yield, because they want people to say, okay, this is a partisan process, this is a politicized process. And when it does that, it debases the essence and process and procedures. For me, her posturing as a suspended CJ amounts to a provocation of the judiciary and an abuse of the Constitution. Why? It's explicit in the Constitution that in camera, you know as CJ what that means. It is explicit that the president has nothing to do with it. The process, when it gets to the Council of State, you know, it must take an automatic process whatsoever. You know as CJ. So why are you trolling and skirting around all of these? In any case, is she trying to tell us that with the current posturing and all of these suits being filed in proxy of her?
No, she has filed only one suit.
No, for her, but we have other people like the minority.
Yes, so it is unfair to say proxies.
Well, viewed, which could be interpreted as proxies. Is that fair?
I think it's unfair to her.
Yeah.
She has filed only one suit.
Okay, she has filed one suit.
On the 21st.
Okay, let's say she has
filed. And that is yet to be determined.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, based on her suit and the rest of the suits that could be interpreted by, you know, bystanders that these may be proxy suits, are an attack to the process and a disrespect to it, as far as I'm concerned. Is she invariably saying that if she's called back to be CJ, she can actually work with these judges? That's number one, right? Based on the current acrimony that she's finding within this process. In any case, when they say in camera and all of these,
the judges are doing their judge duties.
Yes.
It's not personal. So why do you have a suspicion that she may not be able to work with those who have ruled against bringing her back?
Because it is beginning to get personal.
Injuncting the process.
Because it is beginning to get personal. Godfred Dame, who is her representative, is mentioning names. Is he not? Is that not personal? Is Justice Poorman's name not mentioned? That is personal. So if he was doing it devoid of personalities, then we can talk about that. In any case, is it not problematic, Samson? You are lawyers. You protect your profession. You protect and respect the very institution which is the judiciary. That a former attorney general, 5 months out of office, is representing a CJ. I'm not saying there's something wrong with it, but when you look at it from a political, moral perspective, what does it connote?
The Constitution says
what interpretation
people must pick lawyers of their choice.
Their choice, yes. But if you were an attorney general who had just left office 5 months into or out of office, you are being called by a suspended CJ who you worked with as attorney general, as the government's lawyer, to come and represent her in this kind of case.
You're pointing at me. I don't let the optics obstruct me.
Yeah.
I have represented NDC people. I have represented NPP people. Yes. At the
no,
top
not you.
In
not
the
you.
Government.
No, I'm looking at
I'm suggesting that to you.
Yes.
And that I've heard people in NDC forget that you have represented their people. They say you are MPP. I've heard people in MPP forget that you have represented MPP. People say you are NDC.
Samson.
That doesn't bother me because as a lawyer,
yes.
I take an oath.
You are a lawyer.
To defend anybody.
You are a lawyer.
I find that they need to be defended.
You are a lawyer. He was a former attorney general. That's a very high office. That's a very high office.
It's an office for a lawyer.
Right? It's an office for a lawyer, but not every lawyer gets to occupy it. So once you occupy it...
The lawyer who catches the eye of the president.
Yes, so once you catch the eye of the president, we have clad you with a constitutional power and a certain respect that comes with it. And that interpretation you give to the public in and of itself is problematic. And this is why people are beginning to give that partisan interpretation, which is deliberate at poisoning the well, as far as these issues are concerned. Why? Did we not
What's
see?
your concern?
No,
He says Chachuchi Kata is NDC lawyer.
Yes.
Tayo Sori is NDC lawyer. I can't agree with that. I don't agree with that.
So you see, you yourself is having...
That's my point.
Yeah, that's your point. So, but
Bakavomawo is also NDC lawyer. So it means this is orchestrated by the NDC.
No.
Is Chachuchi Kata not NDC?
He's NDC.
Is he not proud to be NDC?
Yeah, and what's wrong with him being NDC?
And so what's the problem too?
So I'm not saying MPP. I'm saying the office as Attorney General. Let's distinguish the two. I never went on the partisan tangent. I'm giving respect to the offices. The sanctity of the office of Attorney General and Minister of Justice is what I'm looking at, not the individual Godfrey Dame or the individual MPP or NDC. No, it is the office. And that office is a constitutional office. So if I see an ex-appointee of that office 5 months out of office, having to pick such a case, it begins to raise certain questions in my mind as a citizen.
We don't pick cases,
not us.
The cases pick us.
Right, yeah.
We don't pick cases.
Yes, but you have...
Believe me.
You mentioned... Amanda, you mentioned that Justice Sophia, who sits on the Council of State, recused herself from it. She was a member of the Council of State. The case came to her, and she thought that, hang on a second.
She didn't vote.
No, what I'm saying, hang on a second. I respect this institution. For the office I've probably held before, let me not be a part of this process that could give a certain coloring to it. She stayed off. Right? This is the respect of the sanctity of the kind of public office I am talking about. Because you have a former CJ.
May I?
In any case, you could see all the antiques around all of this happening. When the CJ put in her response, she referenced Justice Sophia in that response, who sat on the Council of State. Now, people are talking about neutrality, that a set neutral committee should be formed. Look at the composition of the Council of State. Why is the justice herself there? She's representing the judiciary. Has she not done an act that shows she's independent by staying off or recusing herself? You have a former CDS who represents the armed forces. You have a former IGP who represents the police service, all within the Council of State. What other stature of a committee do we think best suits this kind of decision that you think would be devoid of certain interpretations of saying XYZ is wrong? This is where I'm coming from. So let's look at it. When we talk about the in-camera stuff, I think it is just not for her personal protection or personal protection of the parties involved. But again, it boils down to the sanctity of the office, which is the Chief Justice. So I think we should distinguish between...
So you are saying... Yeah. Whilst she may have a right to say, well, you want to do it in camera, I don't want it.
Yes.
She should also think about the other parties.
The other parties, not just
the petitioners.
Yes.
And potentially the witnesses who will be
appearing.
If you can blow the whistle about a CJ doing wrong, what should you be afraid of?
You are not afraid of anything.
Having the cameras on you and giving your testimony.
No one is afraid of anything, but they also have the right, just as the CJ also has, right, to make that, which is what they are asking for. So again, what about the respect of the office of the CJ, which I believe the framers of the Constitution are protecting? We should not look at individualize it. We should not individualize it. Okay. It is the office. So for me, I'm looking at it from the perspective of the office, not personalities. In any case, when the Charlotte Essay issue happened, did we see any of these happening? She was electoral commissioner. Why? Or she has pink blood running in her. That she didn't need this galvanized support of a base. Or she didn't merit this kind of discussion and elaboration that we need.
Do you know how much Charlotte Essay's lawyer fought at the time?
Yes, but that's her lawyer fighting. But in this case, you have the GBA.
But what did
you had minority.
Say? What did the NDC not say?
Right?
What did the NDC not say at the time?
No, well, what did people not say? Was it the NDC or people saying?
NDC.
What did they say?
What the MPP is saying today.
You see, again, Samson, when we try to politicize this, right, we fall for, that poison well of politicization. It detracts from the germane issues surrounding this. And that is my worry, right? I mean, you all talk about, when you finish this, you end up with constitutional reforms, isn't it? You're calling for constitutional reforms. When President Mahama set up the constitutional reform, who is chairing it? A moderate, who can neither be decided as an NDC or an MPP. So that tells you the president's vision as far as constitutional reforms are concerned. So if we are discussing constitutional reforms within the confines of a suspension of a CJ, with all these theatrics and antiques surrounding it, we should do a divide of the partisanship that we're trying to throw into it, which will mar the entire debate and will be unable to unpack the real issues.
Okay.
So we are talking about an office here, which is the office of
Alfred
the
has
Chief
been
Justice.
on for a long time. Let me go to Alfred.
Right, a very respectable office at that. If Chief Justices have come and gone.
All right. Alfred Chair, well, thanks for staying with us. Okay, so let's just hear you. What do you say? Ansar Sari has said that what the CJ is doing, I can't use his words, and then you are hearing other people supporting Ansar Sari's points. Why? She shouldn't, exercise her rights at law. And then she says she wants an open process. Some insist that Article 146, Clause 8 is not a right for which she can waive. And even if it were a right, it is not for her only. It is also for the petitioners. It is for witnesses, and in more important terms, it is for the state.
Thank you very much, Samson. I've actually followed the discussion so far and have a lot of things to unpack. One, is it right or wrong for the former AG to represent the CJ in court? That's the first question. And I answer straight away. There is nothing wrong with the former AG, Godfrey Dame, representing the CJ. Why? Godfrey Dame now is a private legal practitioner. As a private legal practitioner, if you are consulted by a client, you may choose to take the brief or reject the brief. And so if he has chosen to accept this brief and represent the CJ, there's nothing wrong with this representation. Again, it is the right of the CJ, as Samson you said, to pick any lawyer of her choice. The CJ has examined most of the lawyers in this country, and he decided that Godfrey Dame should be the person that she thinks should represent her interests in this particular matter. What's wrong with it? There is this argument that this current suit by the CJ is an attempt to frustrate the hearing. That argument is also flawed. The CJ, as a citizen, has the right under the Constitution to vindicate anything that's bothering her by going to court. And one of such is when she's being removed from office. And I dare say, the CJ reserves the right to challenge every step along the way because it is allowed under our Constitution. And one of such steps is what she has done by commencing this action in the Supreme Court. In the current action at the Supreme Court, she's asking for various reliefs. I'm not going to judgmental because I know where I need to tread. But I'm going to state my own opinion, but I'll not judge. If a CJ tells you that two of the panel members, I will say panel because they are part of the committee, who are judges, may have to look at their position relative to being part of that committee once again, I think it's a fair demand. Now, even if you go to the chief's palace and there's a matter before the chief has empaneled some chiefs to sit on your matter, it is within your right to raise an objection as to the inclusion of any of the members of the panel. And so if the CJ is now saying that looking at the issues at play, Justice Poaman sat on some cases, and those cases have formed part of the basis for her removal from office. And for that matter, she is of the opinion that it's because to make a determination that Justice Poaman is not qualified to sit in the matter. I mean, that one's a fair request. As whether to grant by the Supreme Court, we leave it. The second one also has to do with another case where the CJ sat with other judges, including Justice Poaman. And that particular case is being used for her removal. The CJ says, wait, if you are going to remove me based on this case, a panel member of this committee sat on that panel. So let me ask this question. Whatever the CJ says that she may want to call Justice Poaman as her witness related to that allegation in that matter, what happens? She tells you, yes, Justice Poaman is my witness in that case. And so you look at the optics and look at the various circumstances. The CJ had no option than to go to court.
The question arising from what you just brought up has been that, first of all, who empaneled these judges to sit on the matters that she's complaining about?
The president, on advice of the Council of State.
No, the matters that she's complaining that they sat on that matter involving one of the petitioners or more than one of the petitioners, and therefore they shouldn't sit in judgment of her. Who empaneled?
All right. She empaneled as the Chief Justice.
Right. When she empaneled them, was it her expectation that what they would do would be personal?
Not personal.
But applying the law, right? But applying the law and doing justice, right?
Exactly.
So why does she have a problem now?
You see, she has a problem per her rates because that decision that they took wasn't her personal decision. It was a decision of the panel. And if you are not going to question her based on that particular decision, it will be fair that all members of that panel may have to stay away from interrogating what she did on that particular matter.
Maybe they being part of the panel rather will benefit you.
That's why I pose the question. So if she decides that Justice Poaman is my witness, I want to call him as my witness related to that particular allegation, what happens?
Well, how do you answer to the question that in the Daniel Esiedu matter, for example, she had the opportunity to deal with the matter previously. And then when it came before her, when she was Chief Justice, she didn't see that, what she's raising now was substantive. And so she went ahead. How about that?
I mean, Samson, we do not know the full facts in that particular matter, but I understand that in one of such cases, she was not even part of the panel because she has sat on that case at the Court of Appeal. And I stand to be corrected. And so in those 4 cases, if you have one judge who sat on them, and there's an allegation against a certain Chief Justice related to those particular cases, wouldn't it be fair that that judge does not form part of the panel that's seeking to interrogate that particular matter? Fairness, as we all know, is something that we must all see that is being done or is being done.
Okay.
And let me move further to address this issue about in-camera hearing. Or on camera. I mean, that's the difference. Is it in or on?
In or on camera. Is it her right to waive?
Let me address you, Samson. Now, if you take Article 146.8, as you read, a careful reading of it, say, oh, this one is so clear. But we are taught that if you want to know the true interpretation of a clause in the Constitution, you must read the Constitution as a whole. And so if you take Article 19.4, Clause 14, it's to the effect that if you are hearing every matter, it should be by public hearing, unless that commission or that committee comes to effect to say that, no, this matter must be heard in private or in camera. And if you also go further, look at Article 281.
No, the article you just referred, does it not defeat the argument that it should be public? Because this provision says it should not be public.
Yes, I'm building an argument.
Okay.
If you look at Article 19.4, it says it should be in public unless or until the committee or the commission says no, it should be in camera. Article 281 has the same provision. And why are they saying that those two provisions, they can be held in camera? On three main grounds. That if that body is of opinion that based on public morality, public safety, and public order, they may want to say, let's hear this matter in camera. And so the question that comes out is, what is the spirit or the rationale behind Article 148 and 146.8 of the Constitution? The rationale could be deduced, not from the plain text, but you may have to look at the spirit, having in mind other provisions. And in the other provisions, the catchphrase is public morality, public safety, and public order. And so in interpreting Article 146.8, you will have to look at the situation to see whether indeed, in the circumstance of this case, public morality will be defeated, public safety will be defeated, or public order will be defeated. And we should also not forget that they're saying all proceedings should be in camera. But the proceedings have already leaked. The proceedings have already leaked. We've all read the proceedings.
When proceedings get leaked, there are sanctions, right?
Samson, I'm coming there. When proceedings get leaked, we are told in the dairy case that it will not vitiate the proceedings, so-called, when they get leaked. Even though the provision that talks about shall, the Supreme Court said no, notwithstanding that one, it will not vitiate the proceedings. And so the taking of the Supreme Court in dairy cases to the fact that the leakage of the proceedings or not is inconsequential. And so the use of the word shall there in the Constitution, to my mind, could be interpreted to mean may. And we should not forget, once again, that the Supreme Court in other cases have interpreted shall to mean may.
Like?
You look at the Article 49 of the Constitution.
No, you said
signing of
in other cases. Correct. Signing of pin sheets.
Yes,
right.
that's what I'm giving you that one.
Okay.
Article 49, dealing with shall, the presiding officer shall sign, etc., etc. Let's go back to 2013 election petition. What was the holding of the Supreme Court? And so you may have shall there, but looking at the purpose or the intendment of that provision, is it possible for the Supreme Court to rule otherwise?
You think?
And so this particular matter,
you think the two situations are the same?
Samson, the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court said the presiding officer is supposed to sign, but his failure, yes, he must sign, but his failure to sign should not be held to invalidate the vote, because the vote was held in the public, it was counted in the public, other parties to the election process also signed. So you cannot punish the voter and all other stakeholders for the sins of the presiding officer. Is that reasonable to you?
Excellent, Samson. So you see here, the Supreme Court decided to look at other circumstances to say, not to stand the shall, it should not affect the outcome.
Correct.
The Supreme Court decided to look at other circumstances, other factors. That is the same way that this case is going to do. You look at the circumstances, the factors, the Supreme Court may, I'm not saying they are going to do that. I'm just expressing an opinion.
So here, what makes the circumstance, whatever, that should call on the court to deviate from the clear provision? What do you say? That public morality, public safety,
and public order.
How?
Samson, already, as I said, the petitions are out there.
That is a
And
breach.
so if there's any harm,
that is a breach by who?
If there's any harm, it's been caused.
That's a breach by who?
I cannot point out.
Okay.
It got leaked. And if the Supreme Court in the Derry case had ruled that such a leakage will vitiate the procedure, it will tell you that the Supreme Court was very mindful of the use of the word shall, just to vitiate everything. But it didn't happen that way. Again, if you look at Article 146.8, I think you ask Amanda a question, whether it creates a right. Article 146.8 creates two sets of things or more. One is an attempt to limit the right of the person or the subject of the investigation, which may also be looked at vis-a-vis Article 17 of the Constitution dealing with discrimination. Two, the other aspect has to do with the creation of a substantive right for that person to say have the right to in-camera hearing.
Do you
Can
think
these rights be waived?
Do you think sincerely that 146.8 creates a right?
To me, I see it that way because it is a right created for the person to say you cannot air this in the public. It is a right.
Really?
It is also a limitation on the right of that person to a public hearing under Article 19.
When the Constitution says that 146, I want to read it again. We have read it once or twice, but I just want to read it again. 146.8 says, all proceedings under this article shall be held in camera. Is that a right?
A privilege.
Relative to who? Related to the subject. So that's why if the current pan decides to say that we are going to hear it in the open, the CJ may say, this is my right. And Article 146.8.
Relative to the subject, you are writing that into the Constitution. It's not there. All proceedings under this article shall be held in camera.
And if you follow from where you've got into,
yes,
you realize that the target is the subject.
There's a comma. Then after that, it says a comma. And the justice or chairman against whom the petition is made is entitled to be heard in his defense by himself or by a lawyer or other person of other aspect of his choice.
So if you look at 146 carefully, it is targeting the subject, the judge.
In my learning, respectfully, in my learning, it is difficult for me to see a right-creating provision in Article 8, Article 146.8. But once again, we are jumping the gun, are we not? Let's wait for the law lords on the Wu side to come out with what will happen.
Yes.
Okay, so a couple of people have asked for some further commentary or rebuttals of sort. Let me do that quickly so that we can wrap up and go to the next matter we have to discuss. Yes, Amanda, you wanted to say something.
And after that, you have me, I think.
You are asking for it because others have asked for it. That's all why you should ask for it.
You are a fair judge. I thought you had already accommodated for all of them.
Okay, let's hear you, Amanda.
In this lovely debate we have.
Yes.
So the Chief Justice is seeking to waiver in-camera privilege. That's the relief she's seeking. And the privilege exists for her benefit. It's a
privilege.
It's a privilege for confidentiality and privacy. It's for her benefit, which she's saying she wants to waiver.
What you're saying, you're reading into the Constitution.
I'm reading into it, but I'm going somewhere with this. And the waiver is, of course, voluntary and informed. And above all, the law allows for this. And I'm going to show you where the law allows for this. The Supreme Court, as we all know, has inherent powers to mold procedures in exceptional circumstances. They have the discretion, under the constitutional framework, especially if to safeguard certain things such as public interest. And so open justice for me supersedes privacy. Furthermore, the point you were raising about, Dami, the former Attorney General, first and foremost, you know...
Get it? I'm not saying it's wrong.
I'm not,
but it raises questions.
It does raise questions.
Yeah.
But the beauty about all this unfolding is it's great for law students, is that the Chief Justice is actually going before the Supreme Court as a private citizen, as is her right under Article 2.1. Any individual can bring an action. And as this private citizen, she has this right to choose her lawyer. And the irony is, with all the people that have gone before her, you know, Dami kind of likes the Constitution a bit in terms of he goes on about it whilst he's in the Supreme Court. So she picked him. Do you see what I mean? So I do see the nuance of what you're saying.
The criticism is that
it looks funny.
The criticism is that he had a role
in
the appointment of the Chief Justice because he was Attorney General. And so maybe he feels he has to do something to protect. But again, he's not the one who appoints himself as the lawyer. But the other question people are asking, those who share views like yours, is, so what should we make of Godfrey Dame's criticism of the lawyers representing the petitioners? What should we make of it?
I mean, it's unfortunate. I think he should have just stuck to the law and it would have helped. But, you know, first and foremost, you know, I've met Dami a few times. He really is quite an academic in terms of, he really does believe in the Constitution, and, you know, it's his thing to sort of like go into the meat of it. And he sees it a particular way. He thinks he's the best person to defend her, and she has seen a lot of counsel before her and really does probably like his energy for defending.
Okay.
So the nuance of, it does look optics-wise, because, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the word we're all trying to mention is optics. How does it look that she's being accused of perhaps making a lot of cases in favor of NPP, and that is why perhaps she's in the seat she's in, and then the NPP former Attorney General mouthpiece is now defending her? There is optics-wise...
The timing is important. 5 months out of office.
And Thaddeus Sorry, whom he accuses, which among the fraternity, many say is an unfair accusation of Thaddeus Sorry, because if you really know Thaddeus Sorry, some would have rather said that he was a lot more predisposed to the NPP tradition rather than an NDC. But he's everybody's favorite lawyer. You can't take that away from him. Yeah. Now, I got a comment here that says, Amanda says, public interest trumps what? Public interest cannot trump the Constitution. Yeah. It's the Constitution that dictates what must happen. Professor Appiaje, quickly, in a minute, just in a minute. Hi, Prof.
Hello.
Yes, yes. So, yes, you have heard. What is it that you want to say?
Sorry, my line went off for a few minutes, so I just reconnected.
All right. Thank you. So you hold on there. Yes.
Where I'm coming in, I'm not saying there's a certain wrong that has been done. My point is, when we talk about PEPs, politically exposed people, there's a reason why we have PEPs. Okay. And there's a reason why when someone even leaves office, they say you still have 5 years out of office to be cleared of the PEP tag, which is a politically exposed person. I'm talking about timing. If the CJ goes to take Nia Iko Otu as a lawyer, I'm not going to crack or say anything about it. This is an AG who just left office 5 months after, right? Apart from being involved in, you know, he was the chief legal advisor and lawyer of the government.
So what?
He's a good lawyer.
No, I'm not saying this. Look, had dealings within, I'm just giving the optics of it. The law does not mean to say something is wrong. There's something called morality and sanctity of office. Yeah. Which is why I keep giving this example that Sophia stayed off, even as a member of Council of State representing the judiciary, saw that, oh, I've been here before.
That's a personal decision.
Yeah, but which has something to do with morality and sanctity of public office.
Okay, so I guess we can move on we can move on to the arrest of the Adenta Kumi, what's his name? That's how they call him. That he took a petition to the president asking for the committee to be dissolved. Because he had seen he has seen Puaman, the chair, he has seen Adibu, he has seen Yoni Kolendi, and Thaddeus Sorry at a restaurant. and they were overheard discussing this matter. As we talk about it quickly, the CCTV footage will go out there. And sincerely, I don't know how these judges are feeling about the circumstances. Have you seen the video? Have you heard of...
I've seen the video,
but not
the audio.
Have you heard of the background for the video?
Yes, definitely.
You've heard of the background?
Yeah.
That two of the judges, Kwame was not there, so that appears to be a lie he told. Two of the judges had their birthdays. One had his birthday previous week or days, and the other one had his birthday. So the two of them went to this restaurant on their birthday, have a quiet time. And then a friend of theirs, Yoni Kolendi, joins them. And as you see in the video, the footage that's showing, they walk into the restaurant. They are passing by Tadio Sori. He was seated with one other person. They pass, go to take their table, far away from where, a little away from where Tadio Sori was seated. But Yoni Kolendi spots Tadio Sori. So he turns to him. The person Tadio Sori is sitting with rather spots Yoni Kolendi and speaks to that person. They shake hands. Then he shakes hands with Tadio Sori and they hug. Then you can see clearly that Yoni is pointing him to the other judges. So Tadio Sori moves to those judges, shakes hands with them and bows, and then returns to his table and leaves them there. Yet, this is the accusation that the judges face. And NIB have picked up the guy and charged him with publication of false news. Let's be very quick about that so we can take a break and return to the other issue. Yep.
Well, I think for the NDC team, perhaps, or the NDC is not quite national security, perhaps, but I just think national security should have handled that a lot more sensitively because, above all, since we're using the word Trump, what trumps everything, above all, free speech and one's ability to petition, to formally petition based on what he sees as his evidence that can be absolutely discredited is his right as any citizen of the country. And so he did that, and he did that formally. Do you see what I mean? To formally make the petition is a good thing to do. And false information, as we saw, that was a very brief encounter. They certainly didn't look like they were about to meet each other. And perhaps had the president, received the petition, he could have formally replied that I've seen the evidence as well, should he have, and then just dispensed of it. That would have been a better way than, security forces picking one up just because they have an opinion, because then I should watch my words more. Now, if an opinion means something.
Would you do that you take a petition and you say, regardless of how false the petition is, it's permitted? Would you do that, take a petition to the president on a sensitive matter like this, and we don't know which went first, whether the petition went first or his public commentary and publication of the petition is what he did first? Will you go out there and say, I have sent a petition, and put the petition in the public and say, I've sent a petition to the president, I've sent this petition to the president, and I'm saying that I saw these judges there, they were discussing this thing, and they are compromised, so they should be removed together with a lawyer. Will you do that?
No, I wouldn't. But then
will you advise a client to do that?
No, I wouldn't. But the point
why
is,
not?
Here is elements of hearsay in terms of at least he didn't lie that it was a restaurant and the parties were there. But there was a certain element of hearsay which suggests perhaps he wasn't there. He heard it from second hand or third hand, and that's how people who weren't there all of a sudden appeared there, in his formal petition. But again, the right and the sanctity that we do have the right to write a petition and free speech, particularly when it comes to sensitive public interest matters like this, is important. And it's a cautionary tale that in the future, perhaps we should check our facts. Otherwise, the investigative teams might pick us up, But again, he's a citizen of the country who thought it was his duty, perhaps, because of what he'd heard.
Right.
And, watching that video also lets us know why perhaps members of the bar don't always join the judiciary. Because, once a person becomes a judge, fraternizing, and they certainly weren't fraternizing because it literally was a private dinner, a small event. But, this is what keeps people away from the judiciary. That
Right.
you can't go out to do things.
It's one of the reasons friends and colleagues who become judges, it doesn't take long and they start accusing every one of us that you're not looking for me, you're not looking for me. Because it becomes difficult. You don't even know when you can say hi. You don't know what the parameters are,
That's true.
But the law under which they charge the gentleman is Section 208 of the Criminal Offences Act. It says a person who publishes or reproduces a statement, rumor, or report which is likely to cause fear and alarm to the public or to disturb the public peace, knowing or having reason to believe that the statement, rumor, or report is false, commits a misdemeanor. It is not a defense to a charge under this law that the person charged did not know or did not have reason to believe that the statement, rumor, or report was false, unless it is proved that prior to the publication, that person took reasonable measures to verify the accuracy of the statement, rumor, or report. Professor Appiagyei, what do you have to say about that briefly?
That is a difficult issue for me to resolve. On the one hand, the question is, did this person know that the information he was giving out was false information? From the look of things, it looks like probably he did. And the question is, why did he want to issue such information and for what purpose? Clearly, he seems to have violated a certain portion of the law with regard to what the particular portion that he just read to us. However, my concern is about the approach that the security personnel adopted, which seems to be the pattern that under the current regime we seems to be seeing, which is a cause for worry, because in that respect, the process and procedures for issuing an arrest warrant or inviting somebody to the police station to write a statement or to give certain information to enable an investigation to proceed is clearly violated. Well, we don't know all the facts, but the report we are having is that there were about 20 armed men that went to the place. They vandalized some part of the property to enter a space and so on, which is certainly going too far. And so in that sense, I fault the security forces or agencies for what they did, because it could amount to even a violation of his privacy and even his dignity. Having said that, I also think that the issue is quite sensitive. We live in a situation where there's been a recent change in government, and the new government is trying to position itself to, rule for the next 4 years. And the NPP is still coming to terms of having lost the elections. So the whole environment seems to be politicized or politically charged, and there's a lot of political tension that is still in the air. So when such issues arise, much as the person may be in the wrong, there should be some sense of sensitivity and an approach that is less militaristic than what we see, so that the person may be invited quietly and the necessary information taken, and that would be a better way of dealing with the matter. And I'm thinking that so long as, while it may be, there may be the possibility of arresting him and charging him for giving out false information, I also think that there may be the possibility of maybe a caution or something that will not raise the political temperature and cause the issue to be politicized. So that is my take on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you, Alfred, so I'm coming to you quickly and want to do this brief. So we take a break and return to the matter of the Article 71 of office holders. Do you think, because the security people, they would normally not speak, when you see the videos and their encounters, are you able at least to give them some credit for being professional in how they handled it, regardless of how many of them went to the place? There are those who suspect that there's a reason you see them in a certain number. And as we understand now, they were not 20. That's a lie. They were not 20. I think a family member who was there said they were about 9. But in the video, you can count. That is, if that is all that you found there, it will suggest that they were not even up to 9. That the political group, it looks like you guys, you should be treated with a different law in the country. And so you cannot be arrested under suspicion of any wrongdoing, because once they are coming for you, you will call all your party people to come and, block and stop things, regardless of what the person is accused of.
Samson, we are all under the laws of the Republic. As a student of security, I know that if a citizen, or for that matter, any other person suspected to have committed an offense, security agencies have the right to either invite or effect the arrest of that person. But as to the tools that they will deploy, will depend on the nature of the accusation. So, question: the accusation is that he has published false news. I mean, in any democracy, this does not warrant the deployment of even 5 or even 4 security men to his residence. Even a phone call to him, that young man, we are in need of you, report an NIB by 12 noon, will have been enough. So don't have to waste taxpayers' money being in vehicles, be in uniforms, take arms, just go because someone has made a statement that you think is false. In any event, Samson, you know my opinion on Section 208. That section should not be invoked anyhow. If in a democracy, people make such an allegation, for example, this young man, and then he even petitions the president, if at the end of the day, the allegation is false, what's the remedy? The remedy is to resort to the civil system, where you may want to take the person for doing something on
someone may say you didn't advise the security that when you were in power, because the media felt that this law was invoked just too frequently under Akufo-Addo.
I mean, it matters not. You have security agencies who may even want to just take steps without even the sanction of, for you may know, the Attorney General, the current Attorney General, might not even be aware. They just went there to do their things. Sometimes they do it, and when the docket gets to the agency's office, realize that there's nothing to hold on to prosecute. So I'm only advising that in such instances, if you're a security agency, you must be cautious.
Okay.
You don't just go there in your numbers just to effect an arrest of someone who has made an allegation. I see it's an attempt to, as it were, stifle free speech. And you must not go back to that era.
Okay. In that regard, in a minute, some 30 seconds, can you tell me this, that you would have done what the gentleman did, or you would have advised him to have done so?
I would have advised him, he petitioned the president. I would have advised him that he should get himself ready if the president invited him for further information. That will not be bad. If we watch only one point, at the 30 seconds of a video,
that's right.
I know the place that the gentleman went. You must have spent maybe 10, 15, or 20 minutes. You don't know the remaining minutes in that. But the president may be interested. It doesn't take the security to just arrest such a person. You can have a way of inviting him, then ask him, or maybe want to investigate further, for him may know what he says is not the case. Or it may be the case.
But you are giving yourself the benefit of the doubt that what he's saying may be possible, knowing the judges that were there from where you sit.
I know the judges who were there, and I can say Jas Poaman was not part of the video that we've seen. Jas Poaman wasn't part of the judges who went there. Lawyers as Professor Tuya and you were saying, we were all mates before we became judges. We sometimes meet to discuss matters. It does not matter. That so far as we've met, we are just going to discuss matters before. I have friends and mates who are judges. We meet and discuss matters, but certainly not on matters that I think order on their work as judges.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope my friends, my mates who are judges are listening. They accuse me of abandoning them.
Well, I mean,
because
so
it's difficult,
you are very cautious.
to pick the call and the phone and call them and say hi.
There are several instances I've walked into public places.
Very quickly.
And by public place, I'm referring to restaurants and other social houses where you come across, you could see a judge. I saw a Court of Appeals judge. I saw a Supreme Court judge. I saw an anti-graft agency head. And, some opposite, sitting in different parts of it. Like, I couldn't have drawn any conclusion to say that because X, Y, Z is happening, because they are social places. So for him to go that step and to even mention names that are not in there, it raises a matter of what? National security. Because a president has been petitioned. Look at the names involved. We're talking about a Supreme Court judge in his absence. Now, when the national security deploys an arrest, as we say, you could see the crowds already there. And given the turmoil around this, given the minority press conferences, so you see political tensions building around this. You and I are not privy to what information they have on the ground in what they're going to do there. Whether there's going to be a mob or a mass-up of people, right, because of the coloration that this has taken. So they have to put measures in place to go. One, did he not have access to a lawyer? He did. Right. Was he not granted bail? So I think that we should be speaking within the confines of the law if his rights were infringed upon. And none of this happened. So if we are not privy to what the signals the intelligence services picked before making the arrest, we cannot be counting people saying that
Thank you very much.
It was wrong.
Thank you very much. To be sincere, I feel for those judges. It's like you can't...
You just want to eat.
You can't even... Oh, no. All right, we take a quick break. And when we return, just in February, the presidency approved the payment of emoluments as recommended by the Fufie Committee. Matters are coming up about that. I'm talking about the Janet Ampadu Fufie Presidential Committee on Emoluments. On the 25th of February 2025, the presidency did approve for salaries or emoluments to be paid from between 2020 and 2024. And people have seen Professor Kwaku Azar's publication about the staggering figures, 67,000 plus for Chief Justice and other justices and so on, and then independent constitutional office holders, their heads. And he feels that the economy cannot sustain that. So we should talk about it. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's almost authoritative news analysis platform. And the sincere apologies, we have very limited time to deal with this also important matter. My guests remain Alfred Tuya, former Deputy Attorney General and Deputy Minister for Justice, Professor Kwadwo Tuya, Associate Professor, School of Law, University of Ghana, Professor Sharif Mahmoud Khalid is Economic Advisor to the Vice President, Amanda Coco Clinton, and she has some knowledge into African politics and heads the Clinton Consultancy. Austin Game, CEO of Game and Game Group, and labor consultant, also joins us. So perhaps I'll begin with Mr. Game. And thank you very much for making some time, because I understand you just stepped out of the classroom to be able to speak to us. So Professor Kwaku Azar in the United States of America got social media really crazy with what he had to speak about. He said he has cited a document approving 2021-2024 salaries. That's exactly correct. 2021-2024 salaries for chairpersons and members of independent governance bodies. And he can confirm that the Auditor General and other independent governance body heads were earning 34,000 monthly in 2020, rising to 62,000 by 2024. by 2024 December. And he says that if you take a closer look, he put a table which shows the salaries by year and year on increase. In 2024, there is an adjustment for January to June and in July to December. And it's such a quantum leap. The total increase from 2020 to 2024 is about 81%. Then he compares that to the cedi depreciation and everything else. And he says, obviously, it doesn't look like our purse can sustain this. What do you say? I can confirm that this is actually true. There is an approval for the Janet Ampadu Fofie Presidential Committee on Emoluments for Article 71 office holders for 2021-2024. Yeah.
Samson, thank you. And I don't know whether we have entered the afternoon already. I think we are still in morning. So good morning to your listeners.
Morning.
To be honest with you, I think if what I heard is anything to go by, the 81% adjustment on that of 2021 in 2024 may be astronomical because of the time difference. What it means is that 2022, there was no adjustment per se. 2023, there was no adjustment also. And 2024, so cumulatively, what it means is that you have something like a 25% adjustment, 25, and maybe it rounded it up to 31%. Sorry, 81%. The 81%, yes, will sound astronomical, but it should be put in the context that it's been done within 3 years space. That is one part of it. The whole business of Article 71, as have been variously said before during the campaign of the political parties, clearly, and my own views also, is that we have to take a second look at it because it's not gaining the attention and the importance it deserves in the public domain. So we have to find a way of addressing it, even as we address that of the general state working people.
The Constitution.
So yes, I agree. It's just too astronomical because of the cumulative fact that it's 3 years, as the case may be.
The Constitution Review commissioned by Professor Albert Fiajo came to the conclusion that we needed an emoluments commission to be doing this. The Constitution Review Consultative Committee done and led by Clara Berry Kaseti under the Akufo-Addo regime also supported the Professor Fiajo Committee, but wanted something that was ad hoc and not permanent. We have had various people, including Professor Bonzi Simpson, suggest that there was a need to fix the salary regime of public sector inequalities. Why do you think we are never getting to do this? We wait until the end of the term, and then Parliament, President sets up a committee for Parliament, Parliament does for the President, and then we get all these fat salaries or remunerations, so to speak.
Yes, like you rightly said, it's because of the time factor. Hence, it sounds quite astronomical in the years of everybody, including myself. But I think that it's about time we have to review the whole process of remuneration administration in the whole country, including that of people who have been placed on Article 71 by virtue of the Constitution of Ghana. I think, to be honest with you, remuneration is in two parts. One is about the base pay of the people who are Article 71 people, and I want to separate them. You know, members of parliament the president, the vice president, the ministers of state. Really, I don't see even the reason why we should be worrying ourselves with bringing into the fray people in the judiciary, for instance. There are people who retire on their emoluments. They are guaranteed very well their tenure of office. So we should leave them to do what they do best already.
Often when you say they retire on their emoluments, what do you mean?
Judiciary and those other people should be treated like that.
Yeah, Mr. Game. Mr. Game, when you say they retire on their emoluments, what do you mean?
The people from the superior court upstairs, as you know, they are people who are not supposed to be. I don't think it is fair to have bundled them with Article 71 people who don't have the kind of tenure of office people in the judiciary have. They can go on working until they retire at 70. The people who are in parliament and are in the office of state, ministers of state and so forth, they are contractors. Even the president is a contractor. The president is on a 4-year contract, subject to the pleasure of the people of Ghana to renew it.
Are you saying
members of parliament are on contract for 4 years?
Are you saying
subject to renewal at the pleasure of the people who send them there?
Mr. Game.
The real employers are the constituency people.
Mr. Game.
The state only takes over to manage them, and therefore they are people who we must pay as contractors and pay them their social security. Maybe create the second tier. Of course, the second tier is there already. It's mandatory. There may be a provident fund. So we don't make ourselves, gurus in paying people astronomical pay.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me go to Prof. Sapiejetia. Prof, do you agree with Mr. Game? Is it too much to pay the NCC boss 62,000 in today? Too much to pay the Lands Commission boss 62,000. Too much to pay the National Media Commission boss 38,000. Public Service Commission boss 62,000. Is it too much to pay the Chief Justice 67,000? To pay the Supreme Court Judge 65,000? Court of Appeal Judge 62,000? High Court Judge 59,000. Is it too much? The economy cannot take this? Okay, Prof. Hello, Prof. Okay. So let's hear from Amanda. Is that too much? The Shraj boss 62,000. Is that too much?
I say why I completely disagree with him. First of all, the professor says that we have engineered the quiet flood of elite compensation, a golden handshake, a retirement jackpot. And I don't agree with him because if we want quality governance, ultimately we must stop treating public leadership like a discount profession. Secondly, the framers intended Article 71 to insulate public office holders from corruption, not to be renegotiated whenever, they say the economy dips, for instance. And thirdly, we shouldn't punish high office holders for the failure of broader fiscal discipline. You know what I mean? Like scapegoating when, money's going out a different way, etc. We should deal with the bigger issues of how money is leaving the system, how we can curtail that. And I'll give you a very interesting story. I know someone who was tapped to be on the Supreme Court like 15 years ago. So they went to her quietly, as they normally do, and they asked her, and she quietly declined. And the reason she did so was that at her age, 15 years ago, everybody, her peer groups who became judges, she said, died within 2 years because they were so overworked and filled with anxiety. 15 years later, she's still alive and having a great time. My point is, the professor seems to miss that these jobs are highly stressful, very, very peculiar and particular jobs. And we are trying to recruit at the highest level because we've gotten away from the brain drain to a certain extent. And even what we have now is great. We're even trying to aim higher to recruit people like you, for instance, at that level, because it might not be as attractive to go to such a job. And this pay is still not attractive because, respectfully, you probably earn a lot more than that. So the point is, we're recruiting at the highest level.
Remember when Unicolendi accepted to go to the Supreme Court, what almost everybody was saying? What are you going to do there?
Exactly.
Because you've got it.
Yeah, it's service. That was ultimate service.
It was service. Otherwise, of course, yeah.
Yeah, but this money, from a social scientist perspective, it's a bit gloomy. But, you know, you also have to analyze how much longer do these people tend to live after they leave office. It's not just an academic discussion of, oh, all this money, all this money. You know, we're talking about the speaker, the people on the Supreme Court, etc. Highly stressful jobs that probably took 10 years from their life just by being in those jobs. How much on average they live after?
And even if satisfied with what your Lands Commission gives you? Are you satisfied with what your GTEC head gives you? Are you satisfied with what your NCC boss? Are you satisfied with what they are giving you, and to say that they are worthy of 60+ thousand a month? That's just salary.
They are worthy of even more, and that is why at the Attorney General's Department, when I was there like 14, 15 years ago, you know, I entered when it was like the single spine and it was good, and when I was leaving, it was even better, so I missed out. But the point is, they're trying to recruit at the highest levels, and just that is the beginning of attempting to recruit at the highest level. But I think the professor has it completely wrong. We should try and save money where it's really leaking in terms of absolute corruption.
The question being asked is this economically sustainable?
It is.
And socially justifiable in our country today?
Yes, because of what the framers of the Constitution intended, which was to ensure that, you know, people aren't tempted.
They intended that every 4 years, a president will set up a committee to determine, you know, how they get paid. Parliament will set up a committee to determine how the president gets paid, and then the president sets up to determine how Parliament and other, you know, Article 74 holders get paid.
These people, respectfully, I mean, if some of us know some of these people, they're not living off this money. You know what I mean? Like, the expenses they have, this money will not satisfy that, first and foremost. And secondly, it is actually an insult to what they do because of the types of positions we're talking about.
Quickly, we are just 2 minutes to go. Prof.
Well, I mean...
Yeah, his concern is that the times and the quantum of increase, the ordinary public servant doesn't get that.
Well, I know that these are done professionally, right? When these committees are set, they just don't do them in a vacuum. Interest rate, inflation at the time are all play a role here. But you see, when we are discussing matters of public interest in this light, and we cherry pick some numbers, it doesn't help the debate, or it doesn't help do justice to the debate. You have civil servants with the allowances and, you know, some of the earnings that may probably earn far more than this.
Kofi Bentil says that those so-called emoluments are a despicable loot of the treasury. Well, shame on them. Our leaders must find a sense of shame to stop the cyclical loot. Yeah. It threatens the republic. I've always argued that there is nothing complex about emoluments which cannot be fixed, and I propose that the president should earn 5,000 times the minimum wage, and it cascades from there downward. Pecs must be attached to each office as reasonable. The whole Article 71 must be deleted, and that's what President Mahama promised.
Yes, but I'm saying that if we become emotive and populist about this debate, it doesn't help, right? We all know what we're talking about here.
Why do you think President Mahama said he will scrap ex-gratia, for example?
For example, President Mahama demonstrated that already by interfering. You remember when the Rama committee was set up and they came out with the pegs, he said this was too high and was even taken to court. Someone went to court for that to say, was he permitted to actually interfere?
You mean President Mills did one like that? There was President Mills. I've forgotten this popular man's name, former of.
There was Emmanuel Kwa.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, the Kwa case that if you look at it, that President Mahama said this was too high. So we listened to the public debate among other issues. But my question is that, okay, let's say you were head of a state insurance company or a bank, can someone come out from private sector to say that your counterpart at this bank, with his KPIs, is not earning as much as you are earning? Then we can have a real debate to say, okay, these are the KPIs. Can state agencies or the government also begin to give this? For example, you look at all of Article 71 office holders. Not all of them, they don't even have pension pots. So you're a minister or you're a staffer or so by the time you're going home, you have
but they are
pension.
getting far more than the pension that the ordinary person is getting. So what are you talking
I'm coming
about?
to that. Yeah?
Unfortunately, we have run out of time.
But you have judges who are also Article 71 office holders retiring on their salary.
We have run out of time, but this subject has to be revisited. As I can see from the comment from our viewers, and my outfit is by Konati Clothing, 0244676732. Just call them, and they will make you look good. My guests have been Professor Khalid, Amanda Clinton, and we've also had Professor P.J. Tua and Alfred Chia Yabua. That's a tall one coming from Professor Barb Watting, but unfortunately time is not up. Time is up. Have a good afternoon.